Here's your innocent girl telling not so innocent stories. It was a dark and stormy night when Sarah booked a secluded cabin in the woods on Airbnb for a weekend getaway. The pictures on the listing showed a charming, rustic cabin with a fireplace and a hot tub. Sarah was excited to unplug and relax in nature. When Sarah arrived at the cabin, she was immediately struck by how isolated it was. The only other visible structure was an old, abandoned-looking barn a few hundred feet away. The wind howled through the trees as Sarah made her way to the cabin, her luggage in tow. As soon as Sarah stepped inside, she knew something was off. The air was stale and musty, and there was an eerie silence that seemed to permeate the walls. Sarah tried to shake off the feeling and set about. She started a fire in the fireplace and set up some snacks. Sarah tried to shake off the feeling and get settled. She started a fire and set up some snacks. As the night went on, strange noises began to wake Sarah from her sleep. At first, she thought it was just the wind, but the noises seemed to be coming from inside the cabin. She lay in bed, heart racing, listening as the sounds grew louder and more persistent. Suddenly, the bedroom door burst open, and Sarah was confronted by a figure, shrouded in the darkness. She screamed and scrambled to turn on the light, but it was too late. The figure lunged at her, dragging her out of the room and into the night. Sarah never returned from that weekend getaway, and the cabin was later found abandoned in disrepair. Some say Sarah's spirit still haunts the woods, searching for the person who took her from the safety of the Airbnb cabin. Story number 2. It was a dark and stormy night, and I had just arrived at the Airbnb rental I had booked for the weekend. The place was a little run down and creepy, but I figured I would just be sleeping there and wouldn't be spending much time inside. As I was settling in, I heard a knock on the door. When I answered, there was no one there. I shrugged it off and continued unpacking, but the knocking continued, growing louder and more persistent. I called the host to ask if they knew what was going on, but they didn't answer. I started to get a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. The knocking turned into pounding, and I could hear someone or something scratching at the door and the windows. I turned off all the lights and hid in the bedroom, trying to call for help on my phone, but I had no signal. I was trapped in the rental with whatever was outside, and I knew I wasn't alone in the house. I could hear the footsteps and whispers coming from other rooms. I don't know how long I stayed there, cowering in the dark, but eventually the noises stopped, and I was able to make a break for it. I ran to the car so fast, and I didn't stop until I was miles away from the haunted Airbnb rental. Story number 3. It was my first time traveling alone, and I was excited to stay in an Airbnb in a new city. The place I found was a charming little studio in a historic neighborhood, and the host seemed nice and welcoming. But as soon as I settled in, I started to feel like something wasn't right. The windows and the doors were locked, but I could swear someone was watching me. I could hear footsteps and whispers coming from the walls and the floorboards. I tried to leave, but the door was stuck and I couldn't get it open. I was trapped inside with whatever was in the house with me. I could hear the stumbling and the screaming in the other rooms. Something was trying to get in. I was terrified and alone, and I didn't know what to do. I tried calling for help, but my phone was dead, and I had no way to contact the outside world. I spent the entire night huddled in the corner, listening to the noises get closer and closer. For 1 second, I saw a shadow coming near me, running towards me. But then it just disappeared. I screamed louder and louder for help, but nobody came. The sun came up, and I bolted out of the door faster than anything I've ever done. I never used Airbnb again.